Welcome in everybody to Betting Pros. It's time to place your bets. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and this is BP NFL. It's time for week 6, which means we got to dive into the data with our good friend, Sam Hoppen, who's got all the numbers to help you cash all the bets in week 6. And week 6 is getting off to a bang here. We haven't even played a game yet, but we also have a coaching vacancy. My goodness, Robert Saleh is out as Jets head coach. Kind of a stunner to me, honestly. I mean, I think this is an awful move. I'm old enough to remember when the Jets were on an upward trajectory and things were going well for that organization as this young, charismatic leader, Robert Saleh, came in with a lot of pedigree, very well liked by all of his players. All they needed was a quarterback, and now that quarterback has been his undoing. I feel like I want to send an edible arrangement to Robert Saleh this morning, Sam. I really do.
Look, Joe, just wait until the Jets get Aaron Rodgers. They're going to have a great defense, and then the Jets will play well. Unfortunately,
Right.
that has not been the case. Feel bad for Robert Saleh. He was obviously the scapegoat. This defense has been playing extremely well so far to start the season after a rough start against San Francisco, and it's the offense that's been looking bad. But I'm shocked that they made the move in season. I think there were, again, other potential scapegoats that they could have gone with. And it's easier to fire a coach than fire a quarterback as well. So just a messy and unfortunate situation for Saleh. Sounds like Jeff Ulbrich, who is the defensive coordinator for the Jets, is going to be stepping in as interim head coach, and we'll be talking about their matchup against the Bills here shortly.
Yeah, that's our lead today. One of the first games we're going to talk about in terms of potential line movement. Well, obviously that's going to change even more now after the news this morning. So I'm so glad that was at the top of our list already. Sam Hoppen always has his finger on the pulse. And of course, we want you to have the finger on the pulse too. And the way to do that is to stay on top of all of your betting using the BettingPros app. Sync your sportsbooks for free, track all your bets, and also get free stuff because we're giving away a Michael Strahan jersey again for free from our good friends at pristineauction.com. All you need to do is head to bettingpros.com/contest, complete the form, and either download the Betting Pros app, leave a review of the Betting Pros podcast, or subscribe to our social media channels, Betting Pros on X, on TikTok, and on Betting Pros NFL on Instagram. The more actions you complete, the more entries you receive. And just like that Michael Strahan jersey can be yours. The Giants, a more respectable organization in the New York area. But I digress. We'll be announcing the winner right here on the channel, so make sure you ring the bell for notifications right here on the YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube as well. All right, Sam, I already looked at the odds for the AFC East. They have shifted significantly in the last few minutes. Minus 230 for the Buffalo Bills, plus 350 for the Jets. So the gap is widening, and these two teams are going to square off this week on a standalone football game. It doesn't get much better than this in terms of drama, but I don't think things are going to go well here for the New York Jets. Let's talk about Jets-Bills. What do you have for the people, our first game to discuss for week 6?
Yeah, so we saw this game open with Bills as 2.5-point favorites. It moved out to them as 3-point favorites, but now seems like there's 2.5s across the board. I haven't seen any market movement with the Robert Saleh firing. I mentioned that, obviously he's been in charge of the defense, and that defense has been playing well. Jeff Ulbrich gonna step in here as interim head coach, like I mentioned, but sometimes we see a dynamic where the interim head coach sort of gets a little bit of a bump because it's a toxic situation, similar to the Las Vegas Raiders last year where Antonio Pierce came in and he was loved by the players, but I don't think we have a situation like that here. It was just the Jets front office getting impatient. They needed to make a switch and try to get some new blood or a fresh start in the building. And the defense, like I've mentioned, has not been the problem. So I don't think we get that. Where I want to point to is the quarterback situation, which, again, many will more likely blame Aaron Rodgers for this, but he is dealing with a low ankle sprain. He said he's expected to be good to go for the game this upcoming weekend, but that is something to monitor. Josh Allen had a really interesting situation this past Sunday where he left the game to get evaluated for a concussion and then came back like a play or two later. It seemed like he was fine, but I don't want to make an assumption that he's going to play because we've seen things like with Tua in years past of him leaving a game for a concussion, coming back, and then not playing in future weeks. So these two quarterbacks dealing with some injuries, I would give them a better than 50% chance that they are going to play, probably better than 80% chance, but something that could and will move the market if they are not playing.
All right. Fun piece here. A stat about just how good that Robert Saleh defense has been since 2021. First in points per drive, first in EPA per play, third in success rate. There you go. So I don't think the defense was the problem. It's clear what the problem is, and the problem is still in that building. And I'm sorry, like it just is. The moment they had that exchange where Robert Saleh went to embrace him a couple weeks ago and Rodgers did that weird pushback, that's when you knew he was going to throw him under the bus at some point. The lack of responsibility this man takes for failure is stunning, and I've always said it back to the Green Bay day. You're a cheesehead. You know it. You guys never like to talk about it because everybody in the Green Bay fan base is very nice and always wants nice things, and they're good people, but the truth is out there. You just got to look for it with your eyes. All right, let's get to game 2 here. We're going to talk about, let's talk about the Raiders and Steelers. Talk about replacements. Well, Gardner Minshew got replaced by Aiden O'Connell. So unsurety there. The Steelers, back-to-back losses, tough ones too. On the road against the Colts, they played flat in the first half and then slowly worked their way back into that game and then fell short. At home, you had that weird weather delay, a sloppy field, all of that stuff. But excuses, you can, kind of stick them at this point. You got to get a W here. It seems like a good matchup where the Steelers would just go in and take advantage of the Raiders, especially without Devontae Adams. But let's talk about this one.
Honestly, when I first saw this game on the board, I was like, haven't we seen this game played already this year? Like, it feels like these two teams are just like in these low-scoring sort of defensive slugfest type games. But this opened with the Steelers as 2.5-point favorites, moved out to 3. There's been some buyback here on the Raiders with the threes that are out there heavily juiced towards Las Vegas. And this is another game with quarterback questions. On the Pittsburgh side, again, similar to Josh Allen, we saw Justin Fields leave the game for a couple plays to get evaluated for a concussion. He came back, but honestly, it feels like Mike Tomlin is looking for any excuse to not play Justin Fields and not have him as the starter. Like, he's not committing to Fields as the long-term quarterback, even though Russell Wilson continues to just be the emergency third quarterback. So does this potentially open the door for a quarterback change? I think that quarterback change would potentially have a bigger impact on the market than in Las Vegas. You mentioned Gardner Minshew got benched for Aiden O'Connell. At the time of this recording, there has not been any decision from the Raiders as to who's going to start this week. So I personally think it's going to be O'Connell. It seems like Pierce is just like frustrated and done with Gardner Minshew right now. I think if they haven't said who it's going to be, then there's going to be a switch. But again, I think this is a situation where both of these quarterbacks from a team power rating perspective are grading out pretty similar, so probably aren't moving the line that much, if at all.
All right, last game we're going to talk about here before we get to a look at the future. Eagles-Browns. Now, I'm not real comfortable with Nick Sirianni's decision-making. The bye came at the perfect time for the Eagles with not one but 2 major injuries at wide receiver. So the assumption is we get A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith back. That's what we're hoping for. Now, we don't know that for sure as of recording this yet. That is the hope. That's what everybody's lighting a candle in church for in Philadelphia. But that numbers does seem like a lot too. My only concern with this game is I understand the Cleveland Browns can't get out of their own way. They are a problem. Deshaun Watson has played terribly. My concern is at some point in this game, the pivot happens and Winston, who is fast and loose with the football, makes this game a little closer. 9 is a big number. I'm a little edgy about this game. I talked about it yesterday. If you missed it on the show, Andrew and Erickson and I kind of went back and forth on this one a little bit. So go back and watch it on the YouTube or listen on the podcast. But where are you at right now when it comes to Browns Eagles? Because I'm still on the uneasy side of the 9.
Yeah, so most places have this at the Eagles favored by 8.5 right now. There are some 9s and 9.5s out there juiced towards Cleveland. I think the important thing to keep in mind here, like you mentioned, is I think the market is assuming that the Eagles will be at full health with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith returning. So don't, look for a scenario where they are deemed active and then you're sort of double counting for that. I think that's already baked into the market. I think this moves towards Cleveland if one or both of them are ruled out from this game. On the Cleveland side, I mean, they have their heels dug in on Deshaun Watson continuing to start. They were down tremendously against Washington, and I think there was like 5 minutes left in the game before they turned to Jameis Winston. Like, whether it's coming from the ownership or whoever, it seems like they're just going to continue to roll out Deshaun Watson and don't really care about the optics or what the public is saying about how poor he has been. And then finally, the Browns continue to get decimated by injuries. I'm going to try to do this in one breath. David Njoku left the game with an injury. Ethan Posich, their center, is getting an MRI on his knee. Ogbo Okoronkwo left the game with an illness. Rodney McLeod left the game with a face laceration. He came back. Denzel Ward was ruled out with a hamstring injury. Grant Delpit was evaluated for a head injury. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was dealing with cramping. Like, they continue to get injury after injury. And, there are certain situations where once you get down to the third, fourth string guy, like going to the fifth or sixth string guy is not going to change things. But the continual reshuffling of pieces on the offensive line, in the defensive secondary, this is just not good. It's not sustainable. Even if they do make the switch at quarterback, there are so many moving pieces throughout this team that there's just no consistency that you can get.
No, consistency, certainly something that the Cleveland Browns as an organization have lacked for basically my entire life. Like, I remember the Bernie Kosar years being good as a small child. Other than that, it's been pretty rough out there in Cleveland in those streets. All right, let's get a look at the future. We already talked a little bit about that AFC East and some of those lines getting drawn pretty clearly that, it's Buffalo's division to lose at this point now. And normally it's funny because when a team fires a coach, I usually go into everybody rallies around and plays really well. I just can't get there with the Jets and Bills. I just can't do it. Normally I am running to bet the underdog team, especially a home underdog team after a coach firing. Oh, it's my favorite time. It typically pays off every single time. Can't do it. Won't do it. But look, if you want more data also and you want to see how it works, use the BettingPros systems tool. Our new BettingPros systems tool is designed to help you find winning strategies to make smarter bets. You can look at how teams perform after head coaching firings. You can customize your betting systems by sport, bet type, and time frame, and find the best opportunities using real-time data and expert analysis. Track your performance too of the different betting systems you create over time and optimize your bets to increase your chances of success. Download the Betting Pros app today and elevate your betting strategy to start betting smarter, not harder. All right, Sam, let's take a look into the future. What do you have here based on some of the things that you saw in week 5 that now we got to pay attention to on the big board?
Yeah, so I'm going back to the Browns here, looking at their win total, which is currently sitting, there's some 4.5s out there. They're 1-4 to start the season. So some 4.5s out there. There are some 5.5s that are heavily juiced towards the under, but I like under 4.5 right now. Unpredictable is a website that uses betting markets to derive team power ratings. And I shared a chart yesterday that we're going to pull up here to look at a team's year-to-date strength of schedule and their future strength of schedule based on the average power rating of the teams that they faced and will face. So So far this year, the Browns have faced the 5th easiest strength of schedule. They're 1-4. Their only win came against the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are also only 1-4. Now they are tied with the Chicago Bears for having the most difficult remaining strength of schedule. They have to face the Ravens twice, the Bengals twice, and I just, again, with all of these injuries, with their continued insistence on starting Deshaun Watson, I don't see how they get over this 4.5 wins. Now, obviously, it's possible their defense is solid, but with all of these injuries, they're able to be taken care of. I don't think they win this week against the Eagles, so I like their win total under. There was a market out there yesterday on FanDuel for the Browns to have the worst record in the league at the end of the season. That market was taken down when I looked this morning. I'm thinking it might be because of the Saleh firing, but when I looked yesterday, the Browns were at 5-1 to have the worst record. I think there's a little bit of value in that. Dead heat rules do apply for that on FanDuel specifically, but again, with the way their roster is looking, their offense can't generate anything. Even if Jameis Winston does end up starting a couple games, he's not such a massive upgrade, and he still comes with a ton of variance that he's going to will this team to like an 8-9 record. So I'm full on fading the Browns.
Probably a smart thing to do. That typically works out pretty well. All right, let's get to some of the numbers here. We already talked about some of the line movement. We've talked about some of the look into the future. Now let's talk about stats. Let's start with your Green Bay Packers here. Packers came out with another W. Tucker Kraft had a great game. Jordan Love, not as prolific as I was hoping for. I was looking for the smash 300-yard game where Jaden Reed had 100 yards and 2 tutties. I didn't get it. I got to say, I'm a little disappointed in the Packers' performance, but we're back at it again this week for the Packers. So what's the number that stands out to you the most here when we're talking about them?
Yeah, so the Packers are just really inconsistent both on offense and defense right now. They have a high EPA per play, but a lower success rate. So on offense, their 0.03 EPA per play ranks 13th. They have a 39% success rate, which ranks 23rd. So that sort of tells you they're living a little bit off of explosive plays. Like you saw the long Tucker Kraft touchdown. You saw the long deep shot to Jaden Reed, but down to down, they're not really moving the ball super consistently. On defense, it's even more stark of a difference. So their negative 0.82 EPA per play ranks 7th. Their 47.8% success rate allowed ranks 28th. So they're living off of turnovers. I mean, the fact that Xavier McKinney has an interception in every single game.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
This year
hey, you know what's funny, Sam? There's a guy out there right now who's pretty good at defense. Maybe a special assistant, consultant for the defense. Robert Saleh's not doing anything rest of the year. I don't know what his contract says, but he might be free. He might have his time on his hands.
Yeah, but this defense it's a bend don't break type of defense. They're allowing some big play, or excuse me, they're allowing a lot of down consistency. They're letting teams move the ball against them, and then they force the turnover and get the ball right back. And I think with this lack of consistency, it's targeting some of the alt lines either for or against the Packers. If you think they're going to continue to have success with these explosive plays, which they might be able to do against the Cardinals this week, then, stretching that alt spread out a little bit, I think is worthwhile. But if you like the Cardinals this week, betting them on the money line or even to win by 2.5, something like that, to again assume that these teams are going to take advantage of their lack of consistency.
Yeah, and it's funny because Arizona is one of those teams too that jumps up at you sometimes. Like last week, a perfect example. We talked about on the Look Ahead show. I said, look, I know this should be a 49er get right game, but all I kept thinking about was every time Kyler Murray plays the 49ers, he takes them to the limit, win or loss. And it's been like that for a while. And the Cardinals here, do you get the Cardinals that show up and do that, or you get the Cardinals that fall flat against Washington? It's always a tough one right now, but Plus 205, I see, is the best number on BettingPros right now for this one for Arizona. That is a very tempting 2-1 to take. Let's switch gears to Detroit and Dallas. Now, one that I think actually does play to the over, which is already a very high number, Sam. My logic is so many playmakers, injuries on defense of the Dallas side. There's a lot of guys who can make enough plays here in this game on offense and on defense to push this number forward. But how do you see this one?
So there are strength on weakness situations on both sides of the ball. So when Detroit has the ball, they have the number 3 offense in rushing EPA per play. The Dallas defense is 32nd in rushing EPA per play. They can't stop anyone on the ground. And the teams that are facing Dallas know this too. The teams facing the Cowboys have a negative 7.7 pass rate over expectation, which is 3rd lowest in the league. So these teams are leaning into running the ball a ton against the Cowboys. On the flip side, teams like to throw the ball against Detroit. Their 4.2% pass rate over expectation against is the 2nd highest in the league. Dallas's rushing attack on offense is miserable as well. They don't have a single rush this year. 5 weeks into the season, over 15 yards. It was until last week that CeeDee Lamb had the longest rush on the team. So Detroit, though, is allowing the 6th highest explosive pass rate this year, and Dallas's 10.6% explosive pass rate is 3rd highest in the league. So I actually have this game rated closer to a pick'em. I think this game is going to be a little bit closer than people think, but where I want to attack this game is in some same game parlays, sort of building around this particular narrative that the Lions are going to lean heavily into the run, the Cowboys are going to lean into the pass, and not necessarily looking at sides or totals here, but looking at some extreme yardage props for a lot of these players. You know, looking at CeeDee Lamb, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Montgomery over the rushing yards. I mean, the median lines, the sort of normal over-under lines are going to have these matchups taken into advantage. So stretching that further, taking 100 plus for both Gibbs and Montgomery, possibly, things like that, building into this narrative that Detroit runs the ball a ton and has success doing so, and then Dallas turns around and passes the ball against them.
All right, last one we're going to talk about, and then we'll talk a little survivor pool, which honestly, you might have won survivor pools already with the way things have gone. It's been a very rough season for that. Let's talk about Houston for a moment. They take on the Patriots this week. Now, the Patriot number here is 38 is the best number you can get for the under. This was my favorite bet of the week already. I've already locked it in, bettingpros.com/Joe. It doesn't matter whatever the number is. I see New England. I bet the under because that offensive line is absolutely just awful. Nico Collins' health, a question mark in this game too. But let's talk about the Houston Texans here for a moment. It feels like a smash game for them, but even so, that doesn't necessarily mean that the Patriots can hold up their end of the bargain. So what are some of the numbers you're seeing here that inform your decision-making process when it comes to Texans-Patriots?
Yeah, I actually don't know that this is a smash spot for the Texans. I mean, if you look at the teams on a whole and sort of where they sit in the meta of the NFL, like they're on 2 opposite ends of the spectrum. But Houston hasn't shown an ability to blow out teams so far. And part of that is how poorly they've done on early downs. They rank 30th in early down EPA per play, 31st in early down success rate, but they rank 11th in 3rd down conversion rate. So CJ Stroud and his wonders are saving this team, saving these drives on 3rd down. I think this is an indictment a little bit on Bobby Slowick because they're wasting some 1st and 2nd down runs and getting behind the sticks. They're having to convert these long 3rd downs that are keeping the drives alive. And when they're not able to do so, they go through and out pretty quickly. There could be a change at quarterback for New England. I think they probably go with Jacoby Brissett again. There have been some rumblings that Drake May could start, and that changes things quite a bit, in my opinion, where Jacoby Brissett brought a certain floor to the offense for New England. Drake May could provide a higher ceiling, but I think has a much lower floor as well. But if it is Jacoby Brissett, I think he sort of has enough, and the New England defense has enough to keep this within that touchdown spread.
Yeah, look, I just don't want to throw the kid behind that offensive line. I just think there's no good that can come from that from a development standpoint. People make the argument, well, he's a more mobile quarterback. Yeah, that's fine, but he's just going to be running for his life. He's not going to be able to develop at all. So the longer you can push us off, the better. It's a lost season anyway. You might as well take your lumps, get some good offensive linemen next year in the draft, especially if you have a high pick, which you're probably going to again, New England, which is a good thing. But yeah, I keep hearing these rumblings too about Drake May, and I get it. You're getting bored of watching Jacoby Brissett lose, but it's better than watching Drake May run around the field and get pwned all over the place and just get dropped everywhere by, pass rush all over the place, especially against the Texans this week. It's not exactly my idea of fun. All right, Sam. Eliminations have happened quite a bit in survivor pools. It's been rough. I was out early on, but if I'm looking at the board, I've still got the Falcons out there. I'm taking the Falcons against the Carolina Panthers. It was fun for a couple weeks ago, and Andy Dalton kind of had that little renaissance week, but Panthers are being back to the Panthers. I would take the Falcons. That offense starting to hum now. We've seen Kirk Cousins starting to get more and more comfortable. An incredible performance last week by Kirk Cousins, Drake London, Darnell Mooney, the whole collective there. I would just take the Falcons if I still had them available. Where would you go this week in survivor pools?
Yeah, I was gonna lean towards the Eagles here because everything I've said about the Browns, and that assumes that Devonta Smith and AJ Brown are back. But I actually do think I prefer the Falcons here a little bit. The Panthers are dealing with a ton of injuries on both sides of the ball as well. Atlanta coming off of extended rest, having played on Thursday Night Football this past week. And the Eagles have the easiest rest of season strength of schedule, or excuse me, one of the top 3 easiest strength of schedules left. So I think there will be some weeks in the future where they will be able to be used. So I'm actually going to go with the Falcons with you on this. And if the Falcons lose, then close up shop for us. This is, I don't know what else there is.
Hey man, just keep buying back into those survivor pools. I got a buddy who's in one that's a very high stakes one, and he went and picked the Jags last week, and he said, "Am I nuts?" And I said, "No, I don't think you are. I saw what options you have. I think the Jags up against it at home against the Colts might be the best way." And he said there's only 40 people left in that league, and it's for several thousands of dollars. So, I mean, this is what is going on. It's getting weird out there in those survivor pool streets. It's getting weird out there in the NFL too. Hang on to your hats. Luckily, we have Sam Hoppen to keep us grounded here with the hard, cold math and the numbers. So make sure you follow Sam's work over at BettingPros. Follow him too at the BettingPros app, but also check out all the work over at bettingpros.com that Sam does every single week for us. Also download the app and go get in the contest, bettingpros.com/contest, because we're giving away that Michael Strahan jersey. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Sam Hoppen, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.